My name is Marilyn Dougall. I'm a clinical social worker, which in the United States means I do therapy with people. I've been doing that for over 30 years, and I really enjoy it. I've been working with advanced integrative therapy since 2005 and have found it to be probably the most effective model I have used in 30 years. So what is it? What is advanced integrative therapy? Well, it's a set of protocols, processes, and more that include psychodynamic, cognitive behavioral, and transpersonal foundation that provides thorough, deep, quick, and relatively painless treatment. I have found this to be true, that it's relatively painless, which is wonderful because we work with traumas that are so painful, and pretty quick. We don't have to spend years and years doing this. It's a psychology. AIT is a psychology rather than a method or a technique, although it uses methods and techniques, so that AIT can address traumas, traumatic patterns, belief systems, and behaviors and responses to these traumas from a psychological, physical sensation, and spiritual levels, and heals on all those levels. And uses the psychodynamic, and cognitive behavioral analytic and transpersonal foundations as healing. So we work with traumas in AIT. What is a trauma? The definition of a trauma from AIT perspective is any occurrence which, when we think back on it, or when it is triggered in our present lives, evokes some difficult emotions, physical sensations, and gives rise to negative beliefs, desires, fantasies, compulsions, obsessions, addictions, or dissociations, got the full gamut here, that block the development of positive qualities like compassion or peace or love, and the spiritual connection, and it actually can fracture human wholeness. So, in other words, traumas are events, occurrences, and happenings that disrupt the development, and in many cases, fixate the client at the age where the trauma occurred. Traumas help develop our beliefs about ourselves, other people, and the world. They determine a lot of the ways we are in the world, like our behaviors. For example, I run into the street, I'm 3 years old. My mother gets scared and she comes down and grabs me by the arm and she says, "Don't you ever do that again. Didn't you see that car coming?" Well, I have to do something with that. We have to do something with what happens to us. So I might say, "Oh my gosh, I made my mother scared. I'm a bad person." Or we may say, "I hate my mother for doing that." But we do something with it, and that something gets embedded in our psyche and our bodies and disrupts development. So part of me probably going to stay about 3 years old. And then when something similar happens up here in my present life, that my psyche says, "Oh, wow, that's similar," it's going to trigger, it's going to bring up the same feelings and beliefs that I got at 3 years old. So that's what AIT works with. It's what a lot of us work with. AIT can work with any trauma or traumatic pattern, which is a real plus for those of us who work with it. It treats the symptoms, what I did with it, and reactions, what I did with that trauma, of psychogenic illness, single events, traumatic patterns, and beliefs that are created from those traumas because I had to do something with it. So my 3-year-old lives with this trauma and doesn't even know it, doesn't know the effects. But I do live with the decisions I made. If I made the decisions, I'm a bad person, then I live with that and I don't even know it. And if I live with I'm a bad person, then that affects everything else in my life. And once I have a belief like that, I'm a bad person, or I can't do anything right, or I'm not good enough, whatever the belief is, it's sick. It sticks in there and it affects everything. So if I'm a bad person, I might say, oh, I've got to be super, super good, because a bad person is intolerable for me to know about. So what AIT does is take and works very gently to reduce and eliminate the constrictions and those beliefs that have affected my life that I don't even know about, because they're stored and repressed in the psyche and the body. AIT works with the psyche and the body, which is another way to totally reduce and eliminate the effects of trauma. It also replaces the negativities with positive qualities. So I can replace I'm a bad person, or I can never do anything right, to a more human, realistic belief system. Well, I may not always be the perfect person, but I'm good enough. And what that does is change the way I am in the world from a bad person to good enough. I can now relax from the defenses of trying to be so good so people won't know I'm so bad. And it reduces that and frees me from that belief and behaviors. Like I have to get straight A's to prove I'm not a bad person. Not that straight A's is bad, but the reason I have to get straight A's keeps me constricted and tense and nervous. So the first course in AIT is, let me say another thing. One of the things AIT does that so many other models don't do is it disconnects this 3-year-old or whatever trauma from my present life. So if something similar happens, whereas before I would be reliving, or something from this trauma would come up to my present life and I would react from that, it disconnects that. So when something similar in my psyche happens, I don't get triggered. And that's a really valuable thing for people that AIT can do, is disconnect the historical trauma from being triggered in our present lives. So again, we are freer from what happened in our history. We're not a prison. We're not in prison from those traumas and the reactions of those traumas anymore. The body can relax, the psyche can relax, and we can expand. The first course in AIT is the basics course. It's the foundation of AIT. If you take the basics course, you'll learn the basic theories and methods, and also be able to apply them with your clients so that you can start working with AIT and see how it works. Another thing you can do, it does in basics, is define and identify the cause and the structure of the client's suffering. People come to therapists because they're suffering in some way. And AIT helps us define and structure that suffering so that we have a direction to go to heal them. Removes unconscious, restricts resistance and transformation to transformation. So this is what that means. I come to a therapist and I've got a problem and I want the therapist to help me change it. In the background that I don't know about, there's this, well, wait a second. I know how to be this person with these beliefs and these behaviors. I know even if I'm miserable and suffering, I know how to do that. I know how to be in that world. And so when we start healing and changing, there's a resistance in most people in the back of the mind, in the unconscious, that says, oh, wait a minute, I'm not so sure I know how to be in this change. So I'm not so sure I want to do that. AIT addresses those kinds of fears and resistances. Taking the basic course gives you the foundation of how to treat simple traumas and the effects of those simple traumas. My mother grabbing me by the arm at 3 years old is defined as a simple trauma. Happened once or several times, but it's a single kind of behavior. Now, the effects of it may be long-lasting. It would be real long-lasting and complicated, but it's a simple focus. So if you take the basics, you can treat that in me and help me have it be gone, that it doesn't even affect me anymore. I'll still have the memory, but the memory of it won't trigger these difficult reactions and beliefs and feelings and sensations. The basic teaches foundations so that you're prepared to take more immediate, intermediate, and advanced seminars. One of the advantages of AIT is once you have that basics, and then you take MAP, which is another kind of basics, that prepares you to go to more complicated cases. AIT has seminars that are very specific to anxiety or attachment and bonding, PTSD, dream work. There are many of these seminars. So the basics gives you the opportunity to not only practice those basics, but also to go on and get more complicated and more complex cases resolved because of the seminars that are offered. This is another advantage of AIT that not everybody does, is they have very specifics to help people with the healing of more complex traumas. I hope this has been helpful. I have enjoyed talking to you, and thank you.